I know I have the audacity to wear my Batman hat during this review, but it was my only DC paraphernalia that I really have. So Batman it is. Sorry about that, Wonder Woman.
One, two, three, four!
Everyone is doing movies and TV shows set in 1984. American Horror Story 1984 last year, Summer of 84, which I reviewed earlier, and now Wonder Woman 1984. Hey everyone, welcome back to Mr. Teach Film Preach, and today we are talking about Wonder Woman 1984. Wonder Woman 1984 stars Gal Gadot, Chris Pine, Kristen Wiig, Pedro Pascal. This time around, Patty Jenkins is not only in the director's chair, but she is also the screenwriter for this film, who hasn't written, I don't think, anything since 2003 or 4, whenever Monster came out. And I was curious about how that was going to go and the things that she was going to bring to the table. Picks up with Diana living in Washington, D.C., where she is Wonder Woman incognito. She works at a museum where she curates artifacts, and as well living a quieter life alone. Still missing Steve Trevor, business sleazy sort of TV personality guy named Maxwell Lord, played by Pedro Pascal, comes across a device that allows him to grant wishes and thus brings about a catastrophe events that occur. In the meantime, there is another woman named Barbara who works with Diana, basically goes from not being confident and shy to being a more confident and outgoing woman, then to becoming a villain. I loved the first Wonder Woman. It was a great film. I gave it a really great review when it first came out, exception of the third act. It was a great movie and Patty Jenkins did a fantastic job. I'm happy to see her in a directing chair with a big budget. So going into Wonder Woman 1984, I had high expectations because I loved the first Wonder Woman so much, and I just don't think it was quite met. Spoiler warning for everyone who hasn't seen the film yet. Stop, go watch it, come back, and see if you agree with me, because I want to go into some specifics just to talk about story stuff. This film was actually great in some ways and had some unexpectedly low lows in other ways. I loved Gal Gadot and Chris Pine together. I think they have great chemistry. I think they have a really natural comedic chemistry. I think they have a natural romance chemistry there. I think they do a very good job of playing these characters that really love each other and are willing to sacrifice themselves for each other, believe in each other. I just really enjoy their relationship in the first movie and also in this one, and they did that well. Having Steve Trevor come back, as weird as it was, I thought was a really nice move, and I really enjoyed that aspect of the film in parts. Gal Gadot does a great job as Wonder Woman. I've mentioned in the past how much I've liked her as Wonder Woman and have never really had a love for Wonder Woman. Then Wonder Woman came out in 2017 and it changed my opinion. It was great to be able to spend another 2.5 hours with Wonder Woman. I think she's a really fun character. She's interesting. She's got some crazy backstories. She comes from an interesting mythology. Chris Pine does a great job again as Steve Trevor. He's funny. He's now the fish out of water instead of last time it was Wonder Woman, and this time it's Steve Trevor being out of his element and being in the future. There's some really great comedic scenes between the two of them that I actually really thought was well done. Pedro Pascal is one of my favorite up-and-coming actors, and it's great to see him as the Mandalorian and also in the DC world as a villain. And not a normal, typical villain, someone that's a little hard to put your foot on, and he has an interesting dynamic to his character that works sometimes. Kristen Wiig is okay as Cheetah. She is a phenomenal actress. I'm a big fan of Kristen Wiig and her writing, her performing. I think she is very funny. Just maybe this wasn't quite the role for her. Not necessarily think that she was bad as Cheetah. It was maybe more the writing of her character, and I just didn't find it very interesting in the end. Patty Jenkins has some incredible highs in this movie. There are some great action scenes. I really enjoyed the desert convoy chase scene. That was really great. Scene where she learns to fly and she uses her lasso. Loved the opening credits of the movie, of them competing in this Amazonian Olympic sort of games race thing was one of the highlights of this film. I love that. I wish we had spent more time in that world. First 10-15 minutes was great, I thought. I really enjoyed it. Or Diana as a little girl competing against all these adult Amazonian women is really well done. It shows that she's kind of a prodigy, that she is one of the best of her people. She has to learn as a kid that she can't take shortcuts, that the truth will always be the thing that matters the most. I love that whole thing with Robin Wright and Connie Nielsen. I wish they were in it more actually, but they only were in one scene. Then we get into this whole plot line of finding this dream stone that can grant wishes. Maxwell Lord, who wants to get his hands on it because he's got this plan to give everyone what they want and grant them wishes. You're introduced to Barbara, who, you know how many times the best friend or the person closest to our hero is the villain, the person who wants to be like them the most is the villain. And I just felt it was such a recycled story for a villain and their motivation. The turn of her becoming evil and cheetah and stuff, it really didn't pan out well. The execution felt cheap, it felt rushed. And that's weird because the movie's 2.5 hours long. She's pretending to be Diana's friend, but she's secretly jealous and doesn't want her powers taken away. So she's willing to go to these extremes to keep her power. It was rushed, but it was also too slow because the movie was 2.5 hours. There is some complications with her development as a villain. I really actually enjoyed the Maxwell Lord part of the villain over the cheetah. The cheetah really was shoved in there as an afterthought. They wanted to have the cheetah in this movie, but I just think they rushed her character and her becoming cheetah too quickly for just this film to have her. How they just wrapped everything up at the end with her character, I felt was not great. So we're in this world of 1984 and we get to see Wonder Woman fight some people at a mall at the beginning, and it seems to set this tone that this is going to be a cheesy 80s sort of tribute / campy film. And there are aspects of this movie that are like that, but then they do have these very serious and at times dark sort of sensibilities, and tone of this film tonally changes a little too much in this, and they kind of abandon the 80s nostalgia idea about 20 minutes into the film, and then the rest of this movie could be set in 2000. Like, it didn't need to be in the 80s at all. They don't ever really even recall back to stuff from there. It felt like they chose the 80s just because it was, you know, nostalgia and that's what everyone's doing. Was no reason why it needed to be set in the 80s. So even just the concept of this movie was a little bit difficult at times. That, okay, like, let's scrap the 80s stuff. We don't need to make everything about the 80s and 90s now just because the people who grew up in those generations, myself included, are the ones making these films. I think we're leaning too much on the nostalgia factor. It swings way too much in either direction. It's either extremely amazing and I love it, or it's horrible and it makes no sense. This movie needed about 3 or 4 more rewrites. This movie was made back in 2018 or 19. They finished filming it, and then they were trying to release it for 2019, and then they had to push that back, and then COVID happened, and so they had time to do reshoots. They had time to redevelop things. What came about from it is not a very well crafted and well thought out story. There are certain things that don't make sense. You're just supposed to look past some of the plot lines and the plot holes and the coincidences that happen in this movie. It just really halted the film. There's an hour in the middle that has almost zero action. And for a big budget, and Wonder Woman, who's a staple of the DC cinematic universe, and they have no action for a solid hour. I know that so much in that hour is so much exposition and explaining and telling us things and introducing characters, and it's just a lot of setup. And then by the time we get to the big end of Act 2, going into Act 3 with all the big action set pieces, it's almost too late at that point. It felt dragged out. And don't get me wrong, I'm really interested in this world and these characters, and I always love character development. but you have to be able to balance it out with good action sequences. And I just didn't see as many great action sequences as we had in the first Wonder Woman film. There were as many intense moments. There wasn't anything that was going to be exceptionally consequential. This felt very episodic. And I said that to my wife as soon as right as we were about to watch it, I went, I have a feeling that this is going to be a very episodic movie. We've already seen Wonder Woman in the future. So we're going back in time to tell a prequel, a pre-story set in the 80s. So I knew that there wasn't going to be any actual consequences from this film. And I was right. We had already lost Steve Trevor at the end of the first film, so losing him this time around, you're like, okay, he is gone. You agree with Wonder Woman because she says the actual truth is he's already gone. Yeah, he is. So why do we have this, I don't know, feel like they told the stories in the wrong sequences? If they had done Wonder Woman and then had done Wonder Woman 1984 and then had done like Batman vs Superman or Justice League next or whatever, it would have actually made sense. But for the continuity of this DC world, this DC universe, it doesn't make sense. And this is the problem with prequels. I've always had a problem with prequels. You're gonna have to ignore certain things for the old movies, for the new movies to make sense. But you shouldn't do that. It's not respecting the property of the stuff that came before it enough. And Star Wars did that with their prequels. Not every movie relies on our actors or our main characters to die for it to be a film to worth watching. But that is a big staple of these movies. It's like, who's going to survive? Who's not? Who's going to come in? Who's going to come out? We know that Steve Trevor's probably not going to make it because he's already been dead. So I think there was just a lot of problems even just starting out with this film of setting it in the 80s. Why didn't we set this post-Justice League? They don't even focus on the 80s that much in this film. Visually, this movie is beautiful. It is shot really well. There's some good action scenes. It's visually stunning. The cinematography is great. There's some actual good use of camera angles. I love the scene where they're flying in the plane and the fireworks are going off above them for the 4th of July. That was really beautifully shot. I love the scene where she learns to fly and she listens to Steve Trevor's words echoing in her head. But that fight scene with Cheetah at the end. So disappointing. They've built up this Cheetah character and then we get this mediocre 8-minute sort of showdown that ends with her electrocuting her. But then it's really more about Maxwell Lord and trying to stop him. So everything, even though it's a long movie, the last 30 minutes just felt rushed. Everything felt like we need to end this film. And it felt very convoluted and very dense. And we just didn't have enough time to process and go through these things properly. They saved all of the chaos for the last 25, 30 minutes of this film. And it's like, it's an overload of information and action happening, stuff flying at you, and you're trying to catch all of it. And I'm sure if I was to watch this movie 2 or 3 times, I would really get it and understand it all. But after the sour taste that it left in my mouth after I finished the film, I probably won't watch this movie for a long time. The fight scene with Cheetah was set at night because they were trying to hide the CGI because it wasn't very good. And they did the same thing for Act 3 in Wonder Woman, in the first one. And heavy CGI, so they put it at night so it would be darker so they could hide the fact that the CGI is not very good. And they did the same thing in this movie. Just because she wants to be an apex predator that nothing that this world has ever seen, so she's a cheetah. Makes no sense. Why does she become a cheetah? Because she's fast and she had cheetah print in her clothing throughout the film? No. Actually had her as Kristen Wiig in normal skin, just maybe like what she is when she fights Wonder Woman in the White House. That should have been her for the rest of the film. She should have just stayed as that. Just shoving this CGI's cheetah in there totally destroyed, I think, the third act of this film. And instead, maybe in the next Wonder Woman film, then Cheetah somehow transforms or changes into this apex predator, hybrid, half cheetah, half human person. Then her arc would actually make sense. It wouldn't feel so rushed. It wouldn't feel so CGI heavy. You would actually be able to have time to develop that, and that's not what we got. I've become a fan of Wonder Woman. I really enjoy Gal Gadot. I love Patty Jenkins as a director. Really excited to see what she does with the next Wonder Woman film and with Rogue Squadron, the Star Wars film that comes out in a couple of years. I think she'll do a great job. I don't think they thought out the story and the logics of the story, how they were executing it before. This movie relies on the fact of the plot point that everyone is going to renounce their wish at the end. Like, no, not everyone would. I think it had the bearings or the potential to be an excellent sequel, and unfortunately that isn't what we got. It wasn't what was delivered. I think the studios got too involved. I think they rushed it a bit too much, and I feel sorry for Patty Jenkins in that way. So yes, this is a watchable movie. It isn't a horrible movie. It's not a great movie either. It doesn't really match the bar that Wonder Woman 1 set so high. It kind of dives underneath that bar, unfortunately. So with all that in mind, I'm gonna go ahead and give Wonder Woman 1984 a C. I think I gave the first Wonder Woman an A minus. So for an A minus down to there, that big drastic change, it just got rushed too quickly for it to have been a really great, excellent film. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. If you like this video, click like down below and subscribe. Mwah, I would love that. What did you guys think about Wonder Woman 1984? Were you guys let down, or is this one of your best films of 2020? And if it is, great, that's awesome. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Come back for more Mr. Teach Film Preach. And as always, let's get taught.